thanks for joining me today for my Monday mashup. My name's Jo and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based in the UK. Today I'm going to share with you a card which I've actually recently made for a card swap. It was a bit of fun really. We had to work with a stamp set that had a coordinating punch. Once I made this, I thought it would actually be a really good one to show you how it was done. It's quite simple, but it's really quite effective. So this is the card we're going to be making today. So as you can see, this has got a heel at the front here, which opens to just reveal sort of the whole scene here. So you would need to sort of write on the back or in this sort of little area here. But it's just something a little bit different and something that's quite effective, but as I say, it's very easy to make. So that's what we're going to make today. So I'm going to be using the stamp set called Perfectly Plaid. Now this is one that I purchased at the end of the Christmas season last year, and it never really sort of got used a huge amount because it was the end of the season and I didn't really have time to demonstrate it a great deal. So it's a good one to pull out for me. And it has this coordinating punch, which is the tree. So it works well with obviously all of these images in here. This is the one we're going to be using today, along with the little pine cone and this greeting here. So that's what we're going to be using. And as ever, I'm going to be using my favourite snow stamp, which comes from the Nature's Beauty stamp set. I know I keep pulling this out for Christmas snow, but it really is, in my opinion, the best one for it. So that's why I kind of use it a great deal. So we're using that again today. So we first need to start off with our card base. So this is thick Whisper White. And then, so this measures the full A4 length by 10.5. And it's scored at 14.85 to give us our card base there. Okay, and we also need a piece of balmy blue cardstock. Now this measures 10 centimetres by 14.35. So as you can see, it's very marginally smaller than our actual card base itself. So that's what we're going to start with. So the first thing I did was to create myself a heel. Now there are various die sets and things that have various heels and stuff like that in which you could use as a template. But I literally did just draw it. So I just created this sort of effect across here like this. So that's just pencil mark. As I say, if you've got the dies, then that's absolutely fine. You can use those as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to chop this part of my card away. So I'm just going up to that score line there, and I just want to take this away, but I'm going to just cut on the, so this is the back of my card. I'm just going to cut on this far side of this score line here, only because that way you don't get that little ridge that's created by the actual score line itself. And I just want to place my balmy blue layer just inside. So I want to line it up as if I was to glue it down as best I can. And keeping it as still as I can, I just want to close that front layer. And again, I'm just going to take my pencil and very lightly draw myself a pencil line onto that blue layer. Now the purpose of that is purely so that I can see where I'm stamping. So I want to follow that line roughly. I'm not actually going to follow it completely, but it just gives me a rough idea because I want all of the trees, the bases of the trees to fall under this slope here. So as I say, this is the stamp we're going to be using, and for this I'm using Garden Green. You could use any number of greens that we have in our collection, but I like this one for the sort of ferny sort of trees. So I'm going to ink my stamp, and I'm going to be using first and second generation stamping. So by that I mean first generation is the first image after it's inked, and then I'm going to directly stamp it again for a second generation. With the exception, I will explain here on the first one, because we will have a little piece that will line on our actual stamp, which I'm going to show you. So if I just ink this first of all, and I just want the base of my tree just to go sort of beyond this line. So I'm going to stamp it once. Now normally I would stamp it straight again, but can you see I have this line on here? That's where it's gone over this edge here. So I'm just going to ink it again, but this time I'm going to stamp it onto my work surface here so that I can then stamp my second generation. Now you could, if you wanted to, stamp your second tree and do this as your second generation, but I find that I like to do it as I go along so that I can sort of see where I'm going, but it's entirely up to you. Okay, so this is my first generation, and then this one will be my second generation. So you can see you get the light and dark here. Now I want to do another one sort of here, again second generation here, and then finally my third generation, sorry, my first generation again over on this side. Can you see I've just gone under that line, which I didn't really want to do, so I'm just going to ink that again, and I'm just going to make it a little bit darker, just move down a little bit. Because of the nature of this stamp, you can kind of get away with it really. It's not sort of it's not too detailed, so you can get away with if you make a little error like I did there. Okay, I've just got a piece of green ink there, which was obviously on my finger, so just be careful of that. I'm not too worried because I can cover that in the snow that I'm about to put on now. So for the snow, for this bottom piece, and also for the sort of cloudy effect that we've got up here, I've used our Whisper White pigment ink. This is like a chalky based ink. It's got a strange feel to it. It's sort of really silky soft, but it's great for sort of blending the white onto like a slightly darker background, which we're going to sort of change the colour of this here. Now this is a brand new ink pad. I literally have just inked it up because when they come to you, they come uninked. So you get a little bottle of ink here, which you then put onto your pad. Now this is my first inking, and you can see I have missed various places and things like that, but it doesn't matter. It will build up as time goes on, and being chalk based, it does dry out quite quickly compared to our other inks. So I never like to over ink it because ultimately it will dry a little bit anyway. So that's what I'm using there, and I've just got a little sponge that I use for my white ink. So hopefully I've got enough ink, or not too much ink on here. And I'm going to start with this bottom section. Now when this first goes on, it can look a bit streaky, so don't worry too much. And I want to go over, just over the bottom of my trees, so it's almost like, gives it sort of a misty sort of effect. Only a little bit, just over that base, and it would just build that whiteness up. And as I say, it will go a little bit streaky at times, this, but just persevere with it, because that chalk base, it will just smooth out and it just looks lovely. Okay, I'm just going to leave that to dry for a second, and I'm just going to move up here. So this is my sky area, so this is where I want my clouds to be. Just seen another little pencil mark there. So I'm going to do exactly the same up here, but I want it to be patchy, so I'm literally just going to patch it around, and I'm certainly going to patch over this area here where I've had this little mark, so I can get rid of that. And as I say, you want this to be patchy. You don't want to smooth this section out. You want it to be you know, very blotchy and patchy because there's sort of clouds in the sky. Okay, so now I've done this bottom piece, can you see where I've touched it? I've started to pick up that chalkiness. It's just where it isn't quite dry. So I'm just going to give it another quick layer. And so you can build up various layers on this just to make it whiter than you want it to be. Okay, so I'm going to leave that to one side because I want that to be drying off. I might have to give it a very quick blast with the heat gun in a moment, but we'll see how that goes. I'm just going to pop it to one side. Whilst I'm waiting for that, I'm going to do some of the other elements. So the first thing I need is a spare tree. So I need a tree here, which I'm going to punch out. So again, I'm just using garden green, and it's going on to balmy blue. Okay, now you can see on my original card here, I've actually got a trunk on my tree. We are going to add that, but I highly recommend that you punch it first because it's very difficult to get it exactly where you want until you know where the trunk part of your tree is going to be. So I'm just going to punch that out. So this is my spare tree, and now I'm going to take the trunk, and this time I'm going to be using early espresso ink. Now there is a slight taper in the actual trunk itself, so I want the slightly narrower to be at the top. You can't really notice it when you look at the stamp massively, but it does notice once you've stamped it. So I'm just going to line this up now where that trunk is, and then you can see I've got it in exactly the right place. If I hadn't done that, the chances are that I might not have quite got it where I wanted, so that's why I did it in that order. So the next thing we need is a couple of pine cones. So I'm just going to stamp those also in early espresso ink. And also we're going to stamp this greeting here. So if I take my card front, I'm going to lay it flat because it just gives me that flatter area. And again, early espresso ink. Make sure it's up the right way. I'm just going to stamp this down the bottom. So that is that part done. So it's actually quite a quick card to put together. There's various little elements to it, but it is actually quite quick to put together. So it was quite a nice one for me to make for a card swap because I was making multiples of them. So I'm going to put that to one side. This is still drying over here, but whilst that's drying, I'm going to cut out my pine cones. And so I want to give that every opportunity to dry as much as I can. It does take a while. It's quite strange ink, really. It's lovely to work with, but it does have a strange qualities to it that you sort of just get used to. Okay, so that feels a bit better. I'm still not confident that that is going to be sufficient. So what I'm going to do is to take my dust buddy, and I'm just literally going to dust it over the top of the whole of my card because I'm about to add my snow. Okay, that feels better. I can feel that there's no tackiness there. So that's fine. So I'm going to use a Versamark ink pad and my snowy stamp. And I'm literally going to randomly stamp this. Now I can use 2 or 3 stamps at a time. I don't need to re-ink it between every one. This is snow falling, so we want it to be quite random. And go over the trees because it's going, the snow will fall in front of the trees. and then we'll have a look at it and see what it looks like. So this is white Stamp Emboss powder. I'm just sprinkling all over the top of that. In fact, I need to go down a little bit because I think I may have stamped some a little bit further down, which I did. So can you see that's all covered on there? I'm going to heat that in a moment. But equally, I want to put some of the actual snow onto my spare tree. There we go. So I'm just going to heat these through now. Okay, so that's now all heat set. You can just see where my little green mark was. I've got a little bit poking out again. I think that's just where it's had its dusting and things like that done over it. So I'm just going to quickly give that another little white ink. And also, if you feel that you want to add a little bit more to your cloudy top, you can, because it kind of changes colour as it dries. So what seems quite white, once it's dry, it can sometimes be quite sort of a dull sort of white. So again, I'm just going to add some more at the bottom. Okay, so I think that is sufficient. So now we just need to put our card together. So first of all, I have my base, so I'm just going to glue that straight inside my card. I just want to line this up the best I can. It's a little bit warped at the moment, just where it's been heated, but it will stick down as with the glue dries. That will be absolutely fine. Just try not to put my fingers over this chalk while it's drying. As I say, normally I would probably allow it a little bit of time just to dry off before I put this together. But it'll be fine. So now what I want to do is to attach my tree. So all I did was I added a little bit of glue just to the trunk part and also to this section here. And I just want to position this where I like. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to add my pine cones. So I added one that was flat onto my card surface here, and then I added some dimensionals just to the other one, just to give that sort of a bit of depth. We'll come here. Okay, so I'm just going to attach that one to it. And then finally, I added a little bit of paste to this area and also a linen bow here. So I've got my linen thread. I just want a small bow for this. I don't want it very large. Okay. And I'm going to attach this just using one of our glue dots, if I can find some. Here we go. So these are just our little glue dots on the roll. And all I'm going to do is just pop my a little bow onto it. Make sure it's stuck down and then it should peel off. There we go. Now if I've got a little bit of extra of the dot, I just roll it behind my bow with my tweezers. That's it. So I've just rolled that just up behind that bow so you can't spot it. That's going to stick down there. And then finally, as I say, I just added a little bit of our embossing paste just under the tree. I thought it sort of added a nice little touch to the front of the card. So this is just, as I say, our embossing paste. I use this quite a lot at Christmas. It's quite a handy thing to have in your kit. We do two types. This is the plain one, but we also do a shimmery one that has a sort of fine glitter in it. So they're both nice. So I do use both of them quite a lot at Christmas. And these are our little palette knives that come with it, so you can use them for masking and things like that. And they're quite handy just for popping it on. And I want it to stay sort of rough because it's meant to be snow. So I'm just sort of dabbing it as opposed to sort of smearing it really. So there we go. So that's our snow. Move everything out of the way. So there you can see that's our finished card. So it was quite a simple card to put together. There's various little elements to it, but it's actually really simple to create, and it's something that you could create with any sort of tree stamp you have really. So we have quite a selection of some large ones, some smaller ones, some more sort of like twig-like trees and things like that, but it would all work, just in obviously the look would be slightly different. So I hope you like that today, and I will see you next week for another Monday mashup. Take care. Bye.